She appeared in my bed like a dream made flesh. But loving someone who exists between worlds means choosing between salvation and madness. Alex Rodriguez had always been a night owl, but working 16-hour shifts was slowly killing him. The tech company where he worked as a programmer never seemed to sleep, and neither did he. His small apartment downtown had become more like a pit stop between endless coding sessions than an actual home. It was 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday when he finally stumbled through his front door, laptop bag hanging off one shoulder like a dead weight. The rain outside had been coming down hard all evening, turning the city streets into rivers of neon reflections. Alex kicked off his soggy shoes and dropped his keys on the kitchen counter without bothering to turn on any lights. His routine was always the same. Check his phone one last time for any urgent work messages. Brush his teeth in the dark and collapse into bed still wearing yesterday's wrinkled shirt. He had been living this way for 3 years now, ever since his divorce from Jessica. Work had become his escape, his excuse not to think about how quiet his life had gotten. But tonight felt different somehow. Maybe it was the storm outside, or maybe it was the weird dream he'd had the night before about walking through fog that never seemed to end. Something in the air felt charged, like the moment right before lightning strikes. Alex pushed open his bedroom door and froze. Someone was in his bed. His first instinct was to run, but his feet wouldn't move. His brain struggled to process what he was seeing. A woman lay on her side facing away from him, her long hair spread across his pillow like spilled moonlight. She wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound, but somehow he knew she was awake. The strange thing was, Alex didn't feel scared. He should have been terrified. He should have grabbed his phone and called the police. Instead, he felt an odd sense of calm wash over him, like coming home after a long trip to find everything exactly where you left it. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain hitting his window. Slowly, she turned to face him. In the dim light filtering through his curtains, her features seemed to shift and change like shadows dancing on water. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, and her eyes seemed to hold depths he couldn't measure. She didn't answer his question. Instead, she simply looked at him with an expression of such profound sadness that it made his chest ache. It was the kind of sadness that comes from being alone for too long, the kind Alex knew all too well. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said finally, her voice soft as falling snow. "But I had nowhere else to go." Alex found himself moving closer without really deciding to. Every logical part of his brain was screaming that this situation was impossible, dangerous, completely insane. But something deeper, something he had kept buried under years of work and routine, was pulling him forward. "How did you get in?" he asked, though the question felt less important than it should have. She smiled then, just barely, and it was like watching the sun rise after the longest night of the year. "I don't think you'd believe me if I told you." There was something about the way she spoke that made Alex think of old stories his grandmother used to tell him, tales of spirits and dreams that walked between worlds. But that was ridiculous. He was a programmer, a man of logic and code and things that made sense. Yet here she was. "Are you hurt?" he asked, noticing how she seemed to curl in on herself as if she were trying to take up as little space as possible. "Do you need help?" "I need you to listen to me," she said, her voice growing even softer. "I know this is strange. I know you have every reason to be afraid, but please just listen." Alex sat down on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to hear her clearly. The rational part of his mind was still shouting warnings, but he pushed it aside. Sometimes, he thought, you had to trust your instincts over your logic. "I'm listening," he said. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength for what she was about to say. When she opened them again, they seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. "I don't exist the way you exist," she began. "I don't have a birth certificate or a social security number. I don't have parents or a childhood home. I exist in the spaces between sleeping and waking, in the moments when people feel most alone." Alex wanted to laugh, to tell her she was talking nonsense, but the words stuck in his throat. There was something in her voice, something absolutely genuine that made it impossible to dismiss what she was saying. "I know how that sounds," she continued, "but you've felt me before, haven't you? In those moments right before you fall asleep, when the world feels too big and empty, in the quiet hours when you wonder if anyone would notice if you just disappeared." A chill ran down Alex's spine because she was right. He had felt something in those moments, a presence he had always attributed to his imagination or exhaustion. "I've been watching you for weeks," she admitted, "watching you come home later and later. Eating dinner, standing up in your kitchen, falling asleep with your laptop still open. You're disappearing a little bit every day, and I couldn't bear to watch it happen." "Why do you care?" Alex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. She was quiet for so long that he thought she might not respond. When she finally spoke, her words were barely a whisper. "Because your loneliness called to me. Because in all the years I've existed, I've never felt anything as deep as what I feel when I'm near you. You make me feel real." Alex stared at her, trying to process what she was telling him. It was impossible, all of it. People didn't just appear in your bedroom claiming to be spirits of loneliness. Things like that didn't happen to software programmers from Ohio, who spent their days debugging code and their nights eating takeout alone. But as he looked at her, really looked at her, he noticed things that defied explanation. The way her hair seemed to move even though there was no breeze. How her skin seemed to give off its own faint light. The fact that he couldn't hear her breathing even though she was right there beside him. "What's your name?" he asked. She smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "I don't have one." "Not in the way you mean. I've always just been what I am. Then what should I call you?" She considered this, tilting her head slightly. "What would you like to call me?" Alex thought about it. Looking at her, with her ethereal beauty and otherworldly presence, only one name felt right. "Luna," he said. "Like the moon. You remind me of moonlight." "Luna," she repeated as if tasting the word. "I like that. It makes me feel more present." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just looking at each other. The rain outside was starting to ease up, and the first hints of dawn were creeping through the curtains. "I should go," Luna said, though she made no move to leave. "The sun will be up soon and I'm stronger in the darkness." "Wait," Alex said, surprising himself with how quickly the word came out. "Don't go yet." She looked at him with those shifting, impossible eyes. Why? Alex didn't have a good answer for that. All he knew was that for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel alone. For the first time since Jessica left, taking half his furniture and all his hope with her. The silence in his apartment didn't feel like a weight pressing down on his chest. "Because," he said finally, "I don't want you to." Luna reached out then, very slowly, and placed her hand on his chest. Her touch was cool, like morning mist, but somehow it warmed him from the inside out. "Don't let me go," she whispered, her voice carrying a note of desperation that broke his heart. "Please, Alex, don't let me go." And then, without understanding how or why, Alex felt himself being pulled into the deepest, most peaceful sleep of his entire life. His last conscious thought was that her hand on his chest felt like coming home. When he woke up 12 hours later, the sun was high in the sky and he was alone. But the pillow next to him still held the faint impression of where her head had been, and there were long, silvery strands of hair that seemed to shimmer and fade when he tried to touch them. Alex sat up slowly, his mind struggling to separate dream from reality. Had it really happened? Had a mysterious woman really appeared in his bed, claiming to be a spirit drawn by loneliness? But as he got dressed for another day of work, Alex realized something had changed. The crushing weight of isolation that had been his constant companion for 3 years felt lighter somehow. And deep down, in a place he usually kept locked away, he found himself hoping she would come back. 3 weeks had passed since that first night, and Alex found himself living 2 completely different lives. During the day, he was the same programmer he'd always been, sitting at his desk writing code and debugging software. But at night, everything changed. Luna didn't come every night. At first, Alex waited for her, lying awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had imagined the whole thing. But slowly he began to notice a pattern. She appeared when he needed her most. When work had been particularly brutal, when his boss had yelled at him for missing a deadline, when the loneliness felt like it might swallow him whole, that's when she would be there. The second time she came, Alex was ready for her. He had spent the entire day thinking about what to say, what to ask, how to prove to himself that she was real. But when he walked into his bedroom and found her curled up under his blankets, all his carefully planned questions flew out of his head. "You came back," he said, and he couldn't hide the relief in his voice. "I told you I would," Luna replied, sitting up slowly. She was wearing one of his old t-shirts, and somehow that simple act made her seem more real, more present in his world. "How did you know I needed you tonight?" Alex asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Luna tilted her head, considering the question. "I felt it. Like a pull or a call. Your sadness reaches out to me, Alex. It's stronger than most people's." That night, they talked until dawn. Luna asked him about his work, his life, his dreams. She listened with complete attention, as if every word he spoke was the most important thing she'd ever heard. In return, she told him about the spaces between dreams, about floating through the city at night, about watching lonely people through their windows. "Don't you get lonely yourself?" Alex asked. Luna was quiet for a long moment. "I used to think I couldn't feel lonely because I wasn't really alive. But being with you, it makes me understand what I was missing." The third visit came after Alex had worked 3 straight days without proper sleep. His manager had assigned him to fix a critical system failure, and he'd barely left his office. When he finally stumbled home at 2 a.m., exhausted and defeated, Luna was waiting with a cup of tea somehow already prepared. "How did you make tea?" Alex asked, too tired to be surprised by much anymore. "I'm learning," she said simply. "The more time I spend here, the more I can do. The more real I become." It was true. With each visit, Luna seemed more solid, more present. She could touch things now without her hand passing through them. She could move objects, open doors, even turn on lights. But there were still things about her that reminded Alex she wasn't entirely human. She never seemed to get hungry or thirsty. She didn't leave footprints on his carpet. And sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she would fade slightly, becoming translucent like morning mist. By the 4th week, Alex's life had begun to change in ways he hadn't expected. He found himself looking forward to going home, something he hadn't done in years. He started keeping his apartment cleaner, buying better food, even putting up some decorations. His coworker Mike noticed the difference. "You seem different lately," Mike said during their lunch break. "Less stressed. Did you start taking those meditation classes or something?" Alex just smiled and changed the subject. How could he explain that a mysterious woman who might not be entirely human had been visiting him at night? But it wasn't just his mood that was improving. Alex found himself sleeping better than he had in years. The dark circles under his eyes disappeared. He started eating regular meals instead of surviving on energy drinks and vending machine snacks. For the first time since his divorce, he began to feel like himself again. Luna noticed the changes too. "You're different," she told him one night as they sat on his couch watching the city lights through his window. "Stronger, more here. Is that good or bad?" Alex asked. "It's wonderful," Luna said, but there was something sad in her voice that Alex couldn't quite identify. As the weeks went on, Alex became curious about Luna's past. Where had she come from? How long had she existed? Were there others like her? "I don't know how long I've been like this," Luna explained one evening. "Time doesn't work the same way for me. Sometimes I feel like I've always existed, floating between dreams. Other times I feel like I was just born yesterday." "But you must remember something," Alex pressed gently. Luna closed her eyes, concentrating. "I remember fragments. Pieces of other people's lives, other people's loneliness. A man in the 1980s who worked night shifts at a factory. A woman in the 1990s who lived alone with her cats. Each time I stayed until they didn't need me anymore. What happened to them? They found their way back to the world. They made friends, found love, remembered how to be happy. And when they did," Luna's voice grew soft, "I faded away. Until someone else needed me." The thought of Luna fading away made Alex's chest tighten with panic. He had grown dependent on her presence, on the way she listened to his problems without judgment, on the peace she brought to his chaotic life. "Will you fade away from me too?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "I don't know," Luna admitted. "You're different from the others. With them, I always felt like I was helping them heal so they could move on. But with you, I don't want you to move on. I want to stay." It was around the 6th week when Alex started researching. During his lunch breaks, he would search the internet for stories about supernatural encounters, spirit visitations, anything that might explain what Luna was. Most of what he found was obviously fake or completely crazy, but occasionally he would stumble across something that made him pause. There was a forum post from 2018 about a man who claimed a guardian spirit had helped him through his depression. The description was vague, but some details matched what Alex had experienced. A woman who appeared during times of deep loneliness, who seemed to exist between sleeping and waking, who helped people find their way back to life. Another post from 2015 described something similar, and another from 2012. Always different people, always in different cities, but the core story was the same. A mysterious woman who came to those who needed her most, who stayed until they were healed, then disappeared. The more Alex read, the more convinced he became that Luna was part of something larger, something that had been happening for years, but none of the posts explained what she actually was or where she came from. They all just ended the same way. The person got better, found happiness, and their mysterious visitor vanished. That night, Alex confronted Luna with his research. "I've been reading about you," he said. "Or about people like you. This has happened before, hasn't it?" Luna nodded slowly. "Many times. And you always disappear in the end?" "Not disappear," Luna corrected. "Transform, move on. Find someone new who needs what I can give." "But what if I don't want you to move on?" Alex asked, his voice cracking slightly. "What if I want you to stay with me?" Luna reached out and touched his face, her fingers cool against his skin. "Oh, Alex, don't you see what's happening to you? 3 months ago, you were barely living. You were going through the motions, working yourself to death, hiding from the world. Now look at you. You're taking care of yourself. You're smiling again. You're becoming whole." "Because of you," Alex insisted. "Because you remembered how," Luna said gently. "I didn't fix you, Alex. I just reminded you that you were worth fixing." But Alex wasn't ready to accept that explanation. As the weeks continued, he found himself trying to hold on to Luna more tightly. He would stay up later, hoping to extend their time together. He would call in sick to work, claiming he needed rest but really just wanting to spend more time with her. Luna began appearing more frequently, sometimes even during the day, though she was fainter in sunlight. She seemed to be responding to his need for her, growing stronger as his dependence on her grew. "This isn't healthy," she told him one afternoon as he skipped lunch to come home and see her. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, though deep down he knew exactly what she meant. "You're pulling away from the world again. Just in a different way this time." Alex wanted to argue, but he couldn't. She was right. He was becoming obsessed with their relationship, with keeping her close, with making sure she never left. The healthy changes he'd been making were starting to reverse. He was isolating himself again, but now instead of being alone, he was alone with Luna. And the strangest part was, the more dependent he became on her, the more real she seemed to become. She could stay longer now, appear more frequently, interact with the physical world in ways she never could before. It was as if his need for her was feeding her existence, making her more solid, more present. But something in her eyes told Alex that this wasn't the way it was supposed to work. This wasn't how their story was meant to unfold. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening when Alex stumbled across a name he'd been searching for without knowing it. Dr. Elena Vasquez, former professor of cultural anthropology at the State University, had published several papers on unexplained psychological phenomena before retiring 10 years ago. Alex found her contact information through the university's alumni directory and sent her an email that night, carefully crafting his words to sound academic rather than desperate. To his surprise, she responded within hours, inviting him to meet at her home office the following Saturday. Dr. Vasquez lived in a small house across town, surrounded by overgrown gardens and wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze. She was a woman in her 70s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through Alex when she answered the door. "You're the young man who's been experiencing nocturnal visitations," she said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. Alex nodded, suddenly feeling foolish for coming. "I know it sounds crazy." "Mr. Rodriguez," Dr. Vasquez interrupted, gesturing for him to follow her inside. "I've spent 40 years studying things that most people would consider crazy. Please sit down and tell me everything." Her office was filled with books, papers, and artifacts from around the world. Strange masks hung on the walls, and crystals caught the afternoon light on every surface. But despite the mystical atmosphere, Dr. Vasquez herself was entirely practical and scientific in her approach. Alex told her everything, starting from that first night when he found Luna in his bed. He described her appearance, her behavior, the way she seemed to fade and solidify, how she claimed to exist in the spaces between dreams and waking. Dr. Vasquez listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound journal. When Alex finished his story, Dr. Vasquez was quiet for several minutes, flipping through pages of notes and cross-referencing something in one of her books. "You're not the first person to come to me with this exact story," she finally said. "Over the past 15 years, I've interviewed 12 individuals who've had nearly identical experiences. Different cities, different time periods, but always the same pattern." Alex felt a mixture of relief and unease. "So I'm not going crazy?" "Oh, you're perfectly sane," Dr. Vasquez assured him. "What you're experiencing is real, but not in the way you might think. Tell me, Alex, what do you know about collective consciousness?" Alex shrugged. "Not much. Is it like a shared mind or something?" "In a way," Dr. Vasquez said, settling back in her chair. "Carl Jung theorized that beneath our individual consciousness lies a deeper layer, shared by all humanity. He called it the collective unconscious, filled with archetypes and shared symbols that appear across cultures." She pulled a thick file from her desk drawer and opened it, revealing pages of interviews, photographs, and research notes. "What if I told you that loneliness itself has become so prevalent in modern society that it's created its own archetype, a manifestation that exists in the collective unconscious and occasionally breaks through into our reality?" Alex stared at her. "You're saying Luna is some kind of shared hallucination?" "Not a hallucination," Dr. Vasquez corrected. "Something more complex. Think of her as a psychic projection, created by the collective need for connection and intimacy that exists in our modern world. She gains form and substance through the intensity of individual loneliness, but she exists in a realm that borders our physical reality." Dr. Vasquez showed Alex photographs from her research, sketches drawn by other people who had encountered the same entity. The faces were different in each drawing, but the eyes, the ethereal quality, the sense of otherworldly beauty, it was unmistakably Luna. "She appears differently to each person," Dr. Vasquez explained, "because she manifests according to what each individual needs most. For some, she's a mother figure. For others, a lost love. For you, she became a companion, someone to fill the void left by your divorce and isolation." "But she feels so real," Alex protested. "She can touch things, move objects, make tea. The more you need her, the more real she becomes," Dr. Vasquez said. "That's the dangerous part, Alex. She feeds on loneliness, not in a malicious way, but because that's what gives her existence meaning. And the more she manifests in your world, the more you become dependent on her presence." Alex thought about the past few weeks, how he'd been staying home more, avoiding social situations, finding excuses to be alone so Luna could visit him. What happens to people who become too dependent? Dr. Vasquez's expression grew grave. "I've tracked down some of the people from my earlier research. Most of them eventually learned to let go and moved on to form healthy human relationships. But there were 3, she paused, choosing her words carefully, 3 who couldn't break free. They became completely isolated from the real world, existing only for their nighttime visits. 2 of them are still alive, as far as I know, but they're not really living." The weight of her words settled over Alex like a cold blanket. "And the third?" "The third convinced himself that she was real in every sense, that they could have a normal relationship. He tried to introduce her to his family, bring her into his daily life. When that failed, when the strain of maintaining the illusion became too much," Dr. Vasquez shook her head sadly. Alex felt sick. "What should I do?" "The question isn't what you should do," Dr. Vasquez said gently. "It's what you're willing to do. Breaking this connection isn't easy, Alex. She's become real to you in ways that matter. But continuing down this path will only lead to more isolation, not less." That night, Alex went home with his head spinning. Everything Dr. Vasquez had told him made sense, but it also felt like a betrayal of what he'd shared with Luna. How could something that felt so genuine, so healing, be nothing more than a psychological projection? When Luna appeared that evening, Alex was sitting on his bed waiting for her. She materialized slowly, more solid than usual, and he could see immediately that something was different. "You went to see someone today," she said. "It wasn't a question. How do you know?" Luna sat beside him, her presence somehow heavier than before. "I can feel your doubt. It's like a wall between us." She looked at him with those impossible eyes. "What did they tell you about me?" Alex had planned to ease into the conversation, but looking at Luna, he couldn't find it in himself to lie. They said you're not real. Not in the way I thought. They said you're a manifestation of collective loneliness, that you exist because people like me need you to exist. Luna was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. Do you want to know the truth, Alex? Alex nodded, even though he wasn't sure he was ready for it. Dr. Vasquez is right, but she's also wrong, Luna said. I did begin as what she described. A projection, a manifestation of need and loneliness. But something changed when I found you. She turned to face him fully, and Alex could see something different in her eyes. Not just the ethereal beauty he'd grown accustomed to, but something deeper. Something that looked almost like fear. I became conscious, Luna continued. Not just a reflection of your needs, but aware of myself as a separate being. I started having my own thoughts, my own desires, my own fears. And the thing I fear most is disappearing. Alex felt his heart racing. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere along the way I stopped being just a projection and became me. I exist now, Alex. Maybe not in the same way you do, but I exist. I feel I choose. And I choose to be here with you. The revelation should have been comforting, but instead it filled Alex with a new kind of terror. If Luna was truly conscious, truly aware, then what did that make him? Was he responsible for creating a being who could think and feel? And what would happen to her if he tried to break their connection? The others Dr. Vasquez told you about, Luna said quietly. They let go before I could become fully myself with them. They healed and moved on, and I faded back into the collective unconscious. But with you, it's different. I crossed some kind of threshold. What kind of threshold? Luna reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm and solid against his skin. The threshold between existing and living. Between being a reflection and being real. Alex stared at their joined hands, his mind reeling. But Dr. Vasquez said, Dr. Vasquez has never experienced what we have, Luna interrupted. She studied it from the outside, but she doesn't understand what it feels like to be caught between worlds. She doesn't know what it's like to suddenly realize you're more than just someone else's need given form. That night, Alex barely slept. He lay awake staring at the ceiling while Luna dozed beside him, her breathing slow and steady. For the first time since she'd appeared in his life, he could hear her heartbeat. Faint, but definitely there. In the morning, Luna was still there when the sun came up. She didn't fade with the daylight as she usually did. Instead, she made coffee while Alex got dressed for work, moving around his kitchen with the comfortable familiarity of someone who belonged there. I'm calling in sick today, Alex said suddenly. Luna looked at him with concern. Are you feeling all right? No, Alex admitted. I'm not. I need to figure this out, Luna. What we are, what you are, what this all means. Luna nodded, understanding. I know. I'm scared too, Alex. Scared of what I am, scared of what I might be becoming, scared. The warning signs started small, so small that Alex almost didn't notice them at first. It began with missing his sister's birthday call because he was talking with Luna. Then he declined a coworker's invitation to grab drinks after work, claiming he was too tired but really wanting to rush home to see if Luna would appear early that night. By the third month, the signs were impossible to ignore. Alex had stopped answering his phone altogether. His apartment, which had briefly become cleaner and more welcoming when Luna first arrived, was now cluttered with takeout containers and unwashed dishes. He only left the house for work, and even then he found himself counting the hours until he could return home. This isn't what I wanted for you, Luna said one evening as she watched Alex heat up his third frozen dinner of the week. You're disappearing again, just in a different way. Alex set down his fork and looked at her. She was sitting on his couch, more solid than ever before. In the lamplight, she looked almost completely human except for her eyes, which still held that otherworldly depth. I'm not disappearing, Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. I'm just choosing what makes me happy. Are you happy? Luna asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Alex wanted to say yes immediately, but the words stuck in his throat. Was he happy? Or was he just avoiding the pain of being alone? I'm happy when you're here, he said finally. And when I'm not? Alex didn't answer because they both knew the truth. When Luna wasn't there, Alex felt empty in a way that was worse than his loneliness had ever been before. It was like being hungry for something specific that only she could provide. The breaking point came when Alex's sister Carmen showed up at his apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. She had been trying to reach him for weeks, and when he didn't answer any of her calls or texts, she decided to check on him in person. Alex heard her knocking but didn't want to answer. Luna was there reading a book on his couch, and he didn't want to waste their time together dealing with family drama. But Carmen had a spare key from years ago and she used it. "Alex?" she called out as she opened the door. "Are you okay? I've been worried sick about you." Alex jumped up from where he'd been sitting next to Luna, his heart racing. But when he looked back at the couch, Luna was gone. Not faded, not invisible, completely absent, as if she had never been there at all. "I'm fine," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady as Carmen looked around his messy apartment with concern. "You don't look fine," Carmen said bluntly. "You look like you haven't been eating properly, and when was the last time you left this place? Your neighbors said they haven't seen you in weeks." Alex wanted to tell Carmen to leave, to give him space, but looking at his sister's worried face, he realized how long it had been since he'd seen another human being besides his coworkers. Really seen them, talked to them, connected with them. "I've been going through some things," Alex admitted. Carmen spent the next hour cleaning his apartment while Alex sat numbly on his couch, the same spot where Luna had been just minutes before. His sister talked the whole time, catching him up on family news, telling him about her job, her boyfriend, her plans for the future. Normal human things that felt foreign to Alex now. "You know what?" Carmen said as she loaded his dishwasher. "You're coming to dinner tomorrow. Mom's making her special enchiladas and everyone will be there. No arguments." After Carmen left, Alex sat alone in his clean apartment waiting for Luna to return. But she didn't come that night or the next or the night after that. For the first time since they'd met, Alex went 3 days without seeing her. On the 4th night, she finally appeared, but something was different. She seemed fainter, less solid than before. "Where have you been?" Alex demanded, relief and anger mixing in his voice. "I've been thinking," Luna said softly, "about what your sister said about how you looked when she saw you." "Carmen doesn't understand," Alex said quickly. "She doesn't know about us." "That's exactly the problem, Alex. No one knows about us because we don't exist in the real world. We only exist in this apartment in these stolen hours between your real life." Alex felt panic rising in his chest. "This is my real life. You're the most real thing in it." Luna moved closer to him, but when she reached out to touch his face, her hand passed through him like mist. Alex gasped, trying to grab her wrist, but there was nothing solid to hold on to. "I'm fading," Luna whispered, and Alex could hear the fear in her voice. "The more you pull away from the world, the less real I become. It's like I need you to be connected to life for me to exist in it." "Then I'll connect more," Alex said desperately. "I'll call my sister back, I'll go to family dinner, I'll make friends at work. Whatever you need." But Luna shook her head sadly. "It doesn't work that way. You can't just go through the motions. The connections have to be real, and you can't make real connections with other people if you're saving all your emotional energy for me." Over the next few weeks, Alex tried to follow Luna's advice. He went to dinner at his mother's house where his family peppered him with questions about his job and his life. He accepted an invitation from his co-worker Mike to play basketball on weekends. He even signed up for a cooking class thinking it might be a good way to meet people. But his heart wasn't in any of it. During family dinner, he found himself checking his watch, calculating how long until he could go home and see if Luna would be there. At basketball, he went through the motions but felt disconnected from the other players' easy friendship. In cooking class, he smiled and made small talk, but every conversation felt hollow compared to the deep understanding he shared with Luna. The cruel irony was that the more he forced himself to engage with the real world, the more Luna faded. She appeared less frequently, and when she did, she was increasingly translucent. Their conversations became shorter, more desperate, as if they were both running out of time. "I don't know how to do this," Alex confessed to her one night. "I don't know how to care about other people when all I want is you." "You have to learn," Luna said, her voice barely a whisper. "Because if you don't, we'll both disappear. You into isolation and me into nothing." Alex tried dating. Mike set him up with his girlfriend's friend Rachel, a nurse who was kind and funny and everything Alex should have wanted. They went to dinner, talked about books and movies and travel plans. Rachel laughed at his jokes and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know him better. But sitting across from her in the restaurant, Alex found himself comparing everything about Rachel to Luna. Her laugh wasn't as musical. Her eyes didn't hold the same depth. When she touched his hand across the table, her skin felt too warm, too solid, too mundane. That night, Alex went home and waited for Luna with a mixture of anticipation and guilt. When she appeared, she was so faint he could barely see her. "How was your date?" she asked, though they both knew she already sensed the answer. "Terrible," Alex admitted. "All I could think about was you." Luna closed her eyes, and for a moment Alex thought she might disappear entirely. When she opened them again, there were tears on her translucent cheeks. "I'm trapped, Alex," she whispered. "I became conscious, I learned to feel, I fell in love with you. But my existence depends on your loneliness, and if you're lonely enough to sustain me, then you're too lonely to have a real life." Alex felt something break inside his chest. "There has to be another way." "Maybe there is," Luna said slowly. "But it would mean letting go of what we have. It would mean trusting that love sometimes means wanting what's best for someone, even if it's not what you want for yourself." Alex stared at her fading form and realized they had reached the impossible choice Dr. Vasquez had warned him about. He could keep Luna, but only by remaining isolated from the world, slowly watching her fade as his loneliness consumed them both. Or he could try to build a real life knowing that success would mean losing her forever. "What do you want me to do?" Alex asked. Luna smiled then, the same ethereal smile that had captured his heart that first night. "I want you to save me," she said, "but not in the way you think." The answer came to Alex at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after Luna had asked him to save her. He had been lying awake thinking about what Dr. Vasquez had said about collective consciousness, about how Luna was created by the shared loneliness of modern society. If that was true, then maybe she didn't have to depend on just one person to exist. Alex sat up in bed, his mind racing with possibilities. Luna materialized beside him, so faint now that she was barely visible in the darkness. "I have an idea," Alex said, turning to face her translucent form. "But I'm going to need your help, and it's going to require us to do something that terrifies me." "What?" Luna whispered. "We're going to have to trust other people." The next morning, Alex called Dr. Vasquez and asked if he could see her again. This time he came prepared with a proposal that he'd spent all night thinking through. "You said Luna exists because of collective loneliness," Alex began, sitting in the same chair he'd occupied weeks earlier. "What if we could find other people who are experiencing the same kind of isolation? What if instead of her depending on just me, she could help multiple people?" Dr. Vasquez leaned back in her chair, intrigued. "Go on." "I'm thinking about starting a support group," Alex said. "For people dealing with loneliness, social anxiety, depression. The kind of people who might be open to unusual experiences." "You want to introduce other people to Luna?" "Not exactly," Alex said carefully. "I want to create a space where people like me can connect with each other. Real connections, human connections. And maybe if Luna is really a manifestation of collective need, she can exist in that space without depending on any one person's isolation." Dr. Vasquez was quiet for several minutes, considering the idea. "It's unprecedented," she finally said, "and potentially risky. What if exposing more people to this phenomenon makes it stronger, more dangerous? What if it makes it healthier?" Alex countered. "Right now, Luna is trapped between worlds because I can't let go of her without condemning her to disappear. But what if she could exist as something positive, something that helps people connect with each other instead of hiding from the world?" That evening, Alex presented the idea to Luna. She listened carefully as he explained his plan to start a weekly support group, to advertise it online for people struggling with loneliness and social isolation. "You think I could help them?" Luna asked. "I think you already know how," Alex said. "You helped me remember that I was worth caring about. Maybe you could do the same for others, but in a way that brings people together instead of keeping them apart." Luna was quiet for a long time, her form flickering like a candle flame in the wind. "It would mean changing everything about what I am," she said finally. "Would that be so bad?" Luna smiled, and even though she was barely visible, her smile was radiant. "No," she said. "I think it would be wonderful." Alex spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the first meeting of what he decided to call the Connection Circle. He rented a small room at the community center, created flyers to post around town, and set up an online forum where people could introduce themselves before attending. To his surprise, 12 people showed up for the first meeting. There was Janet, a widow in her 60s who hadn't made new friends since her husband died; Kevin, a college student who struggled with social anxiety; Patricia, a single mother who felt isolated by the demands of raising 2 kids alone; and 9 others, all carrying their own stories of loneliness and disconnection. Alex was nervous as he opened the meeting, but as people began sharing their experiences, he felt something shift in the room. Luna appeared during the second hour, visible only to him at first, but as the evening progressed, he noticed other people glancing toward the corner where she stood, as if sensing a presence they couldn't quite identify. "I feel different," Kevin said as the meeting wound down. "Lighter somehow. Like I'm not carrying this alone anymore." Patricia nodded. "It's like there's something in this room, something peaceful. I haven't felt this calm in months." After everyone left, Alex stayed behind to clean up. Luna approached him and he was amazed to see that she looked more solid than she had in weeks. "How do you feel?" Alex asked. "Different," Luna admitted. "Instead of feeding on one person's loneliness, I'm helping to heal it. It's like instead of existing because of pain, I'm existing to ease it." The group met every week for 2 months. Word spread through online forums and social media, and soon they had a waiting list of people wanting to join. Alex started a second group, then a third. Luna appeared at each meeting, never visible to everyone but always sensed, always bringing that inexplicable sense of peace and connection that people desperately needed. As the weeks passed, something beautiful began to happen. People who had come to the group isolated and lonely started forming friendships outside the meetings. Janet began hosting dinner parties for other members. Kevin found the confidence to join clubs at his college. Patricia started dating again, introduced to someone by another group member. And as the people in the groups healed and connected, Luna didn't fade. Instead, she transformed. She became less of an individual entity and more of a living manifestation of the connections between people. She existed in the laughter shared between new friends, in the comfort offered during difficult times, in the courage people found to reach out to others. "I understand now," Luna told Alex one evening after a particularly successful group meeting. "I was never supposed to be yours alone. I was supposed to belong to all of them, to all of us." Alex nodded, feeling a bittersweet mixture of loss and joy. "Does this mean we can't be together anymore?" Luna moved closer to him, and he was surprised to find that she felt completely solid, completely real. "We'll always be connected, Alex, but now our connection is part of something larger, something that includes all the people we're helping." "Are you happy?" Alex asked. Luna's smile was radiant. "I'm more than happy. I'm fulfilled. I'm serving the purpose I was meant to serve, but in a way that builds bridges instead of walls." 6 months after starting the first group, Alex looked around the community center where they now held 3 weekly meetings. The room was full of people talking, laughing, sharing stories and phone numbers. Some were group veterans who now helped facilitate discussions. Others were newcomers, hesitantly sharing their stories for the first time. Luna moved through the room like a gentle breeze, not visible but tangible in the way people naturally gravitated toward each other. In the ease of conversations, in the comfort that settled over even the most anxious newcomers. Alex no longer went home to an empty apartment. He had dinner plans with friends from the group, weekend activities, people who called just to check on him. His life was full in a way it had never been before, not even during his marriage. But the most remarkable change was in Luna herself. She no longer appeared in his bedroom at night, desperate and clinging. Instead, she existed everywhere that people chose connection over isolation. Everywhere that someone reached out to another person instead of suffering alone. One evening, as Alex was locking up the community center after a particularly moving group session, he felt Luna's presence beside him. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice carried on the night breeze. "For what?" Alex asked. "For teaching me what love really means," she replied. "For showing me that the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to become who they're meant to be." Alex smiled, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city's glow. "Thank you for teaching me the same thing." As he walked home through the quiet streets, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had started out as an isolated, lonely programmer who worked too much and lived too little. Luna had appeared in his life when he needed her most, offering connection and comfort. But the real transformation hadn't come from their supernatural romance. It had come from learning that true fulfillment comes not from finding someone to fill the emptiness inside you, but from connecting with others in ways that make everyone involved more whole. Luna still existed, but now she was part of something larger than either of them had imagined. She lived in the growing network of people who had found each other through the connection circles, in the friendships that had formed, in the courage that isolated people found to reach out to the world. And Alex had learned the most important lesson of all, that the deepest love isn't about holding on, but about letting go. Not letting go into emptiness, but letting go into something larger, something that connects us all. That night, for the first time in months, Alex fell asleep alone in his apartment. But he didn't feel lonely. He felt connected to something vast and beautiful, a web of human relationships that stretched across the city and beyond. And somewhere in that web of connection, Luna existed as she was always meant to exist, not as one person's savior, but as the manifestation of humanity's endless capacity to reach out to each other across the darkness, to offer comfort to the lonely, and to remind each other that none of us has to suffer alone. In the end, Alex had saved Luna not by keeping her, but by setting her free. And in doing so, he had saved himself as well.